Welcome in, everybody, to this episode of New England Road Talk. I'm Conrad Leger from Environmental Partners, joined again by Art.baker of Indus and Betsold of Allstate Material Group. It's been a while since we've done one of these, obviously coming out of COVID and nice weather and construction season. We've been pretty busy, the three of us. So we haven't forgotten about this. We're planning to ramp this up again in the fall and do more of a weekly or a bi-weekly episode. But we thought it was important to jump on today, keep this going, and talk about some important things that are going on in the industry. The funding that's been coming out through the federal and the state levels, what's been going on in the industry with associations, and the challenges that we've all seen over these past couple months. So, Bobby, what's been going on?
A lot's been going on. Certainly a lot has changed in our industry and obviously the world here the last few months. But I think there's a lot of good that's happened, a lot of reason to be positive. As you said, it's great to be back out, seeing people in person, meetings on job sites and that. But certainly there's been a lot of the challenges as well. The funding obviously right up front was a tough one, and continues to be. We've had some good weather at the start of the season, and then seems like nothing but rain in the last few weeks. So that's been a challenge. We had, kind of some unprecedented heat out there, just a lot of different factors going into it. But, I think all in all, we're heading in a good direction, but we still just got to figure out a lot of those and kind of what's going on with that. But I think as you said, the funding has kind of been the number one topic on everyone's minds.
Yeah, getting into the funding, I'll jump in with the federal stimulus funding that's out there. There's four, although there is a lot of uncertainty about the whole act and how the funding is going to be distributed. What is certain is there's one of the buckets of money there's four basically components of the bill, and one of them is called lost revenue. And that lost revenue component, all the town and cities have to do is show, there's a formula that shows what their revenue was in 2019 versus how much revenue the town or city took in 2020. And based on that calculation, that money can be allotted toward roads. And it's the only bucket that can be used directly toward roads. There is a bucket on water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure as well. But that lost revenue component is one that I think is so important for the public works folks to understand, work with their finance people to figure out how much money they may be due. If you have water parks, if you have hotels, all these things where people were not attending because of COVID, you most likely had a pretty big, substantial revenue loss because you weren't taking in revenues from those facilities. So definitely, you just talk to your finance people and see what that number is, and fight with your local people to get a portion that used toward roads. We always hear from the DPW folks that they don't have enough money for roads. This to me is an opportunity to capitalize on that because there are other eligible expenses within that lost revenue bucket. So again, advocate for your department to be used toward the roads.
I was going to say, I think, I think, we're a little rusty here, but no, I think it's one where you're absolutely right. It's been a challenge with funding, but I think there's also some great opportunity with funding because right now we're seeing potential funds, on this with the stimulus. We're seeing potential new, transportation bond bill in some of the states as well at the federal level. So there's a lot happening where you could see money coming either soon or in the near future as well. So it's kind of that playing that, but also keeping aware and keeping up to date on what's there. And I know we're going to talk a lot more about that, but I think it's certainly something that hopefully we can get some optimism and some positive attitude and mentality going forward on funding.
Absolutely. I throw it out there because there's still several people who are unaware of that, that lost revenue bucket of money. So I think being aware of it is the first step. And then, of course, dealing with your finance people in your town or city to go see what you might be able to get.
And it's crazy too. I mean, the ARPA funding is just a component of it, right? I mean, there's been delays in Chapter 90 and that being released this year for Massachusetts. There's the ARPA funding where there's still a lot of relatively unknown pieces of it and how people exactly are going to use it and the compliance behind it and things like that. And then there's the federal infrastructure bill as well. And that's just kind of getting to the point where it looks like they have a bipartisan agreement, and then there's another agreement on top of it that may go through. So it's a big transition that we've seen from, say, this time last year, people not understanding, not knowing if there was going to be money in their budgets, whether their budgets were going to be slashed significantly. And now there may be this huge influx of money coming in over the next few years. So obviously, from a public works perspective, one I guess, quote unquote, benefit of the whole COVID situation is there may be a turn and a focus more on infrastructure, both at the local level and the federal level.
Absolutely.
So, just to kind of get into what's been going on since we last did one of these episodes. I know for me personally, I've transitioned from a lot of Zoom meetings to getting in person, seeing people, visiting project sites, obviously visiting our municipal clients, getting out into association meetings and getting to see people. I know there's a there's a large amount of meetings that are going to be happening starting in August and September. And it really, it's going to be a pull on all of our times to be able to get to all these events because they're all piled up. I know from the consulting side of things, for me in the asset management world, this is our inspection time of season. So we have people out in the field gathering that data. And then comes my favorite part of the year is the capital planning and doing the public meetings. But I'm just interested to see how you guys are doing, what you guys have been up to, and, what challenges you've seen over this time.
Well, let's start with the whole COVID. I don't think it's time to let our guard down, as you saw last night, unless it was just the Yankees maybe trying to avoid another sweep. The Yankees-Red Sox game got postponed because of 3 cases of COVID in the Yankees organization. So, I don't think we can let our guard down on COVID. I think we're all still pretty aware of it, but definitely exciting to get face-to-face and get everybody out in person.
I agree with you there, Art, as well. It's just as we're starting to, feel a lot of that, that comfort level. It's just, just enough to make us aware and still continue to use, some best practices and, and be careful and be mindful and, and that, and with our crews. And I know obviously, with you guys, with your crews, a lot of people that are, staying over in hotels and they're, eating out a lot. And so there's a tremendous amount of exposure for them, for our people, for us out and about, seeing a lot of people and all that. So, it's certainly one that we got to keep it in mind. It's not fully gone, but it is great to be back in person. And
I think there's some pretty big events coming up too. I'm not sure on dates. Conrad, you're probably best served on those, like New England APWA, a couple big events coming up, their summer conference.
Yeah, absolutely. There, everybody was worried. I'm actually on one of those boards or some of the boards for some of these events. And, New England APWA, for instance, they moved their summer conference to the fall. So that's going to be, I believe, October 4th to October 6th. I know a lot of actually recently some of the association meetings for golf tournaments have been pushed off because of all the rain that's happened. So it seems like starting early August and then moving forward all the way through October at this point, the schedule is really going to be condensed. It's going to be great from the standpoint that we're going to be able to see a lot of people and get to see each other, and hopefully the COVID doesn't rear its ugly head. Just to kind of get into what you were talking about, Art, I saw last night LA County put mask mandate back in place for anything inside, not outdoors. So even if you're vaccinated, so let's fingers crossed here that all these association meetings actually take place and we don't go backwards at all. But it's going to be great to get into hopefully some sort of a normal routine here, towards the end of the year.
I know the crews have certainly appreciated, especially with the hot weather, being able to be outside and not have to worry about having masks on. And that was a challenge last year. And I certainly can't imagine what it would have been like a few weeks ago when we had that, 3-4 days of 100-degree weather, having to have masks on the cruise. So there's all those little things. But I think actually, along those lines, we talk about other challenges, Conrad. I mean, heat, rain, you mentioned about, industry events because of courses being underwater, and I think it's certainly impacted schedules for everybody. Everybody you talk to these last couple of weeks have just been unprecedented. And we've seen wet weather, we've seen rainy seasons, and to see it turn as fast as it did from what was really a great start. I think coming out of the gate, the weather cooperated phenomenally well, And then we've just hit a horrendous patch here with, it seems like rain every day, whether it be sometime during the day, at night, the amount of rain, so that even if you do get it where, it rained overnight and then during the day, there's so much water out there still, that it sometimes even cancels you for the day or delays you. So that's been a huge challenge that we've seen. And I'm sure you've seen the same thing, Art.
Yeah, and you talk about challenges. Another challenge that we're going to be faced with here, because now that some of this funding is coming down, and I think when you mentioned it before, there's going to be at some point a lot of funding probably coming out, and we're going to be challenged to get a lot of work done in a short period of time, which is going to require support from the police details. So trying to plan as far ahead in advance for those police details, with the communities and towns that we're going to be working in, that's going to be a communication thing that we're going to have to have a lot of talks with our towns and communities to make sure that happens as smoothly as possible.
That communication piece, I think, is huge across the board. It's between the the agencies and the contractors. It's with the details. It's with subcontractors. It's other projects that are going on in a lot of these communities. I know we were working in the same town last week, and you kind of have different things going on, and there's so much now happening. And as you said, the funding, I know there's been a lot of communities that have been held up by some of the changes and requirements on funding, and some of the delays on that side. That's been a challenge. And now you push back schedules, and you have cancellations, and you have delays, and everything just kind of converges. So I think, that communication is going to be huge across the board.
And the pre-planning, utility companies especially, a couple of projects I'm aware of where the gas companies come out and done some pressure tests on some lines, and they found, at the last minute, just before the contractors are trying to get out there to go to work, that they now have to replace, a mile worth of gas main. So, trying to get as many of those details worked out ahead of time before contractors get there to do work is very, very beneficial to everyone involved.
Yeah, I know the communities that I'm working with on a lot of these large scale, paving projects and things like that. They've been pretty good in terms of, making sure that the gas companies have come in and given them the okay on these roads, and even, adjusting their CIP to make sure that it lines up with the underground utility CIPs as well. Once a job is bid, what is like the most important thing that a community can do to prep for the actual construction?
I mean, I would start with, I think, some of it's that pre-planning that we talk about in advance of a bid, but then there's also the pre-planning from the time that it's awarded to when you actually start. And, I know we like to, as much as possible, as soon as you get that job awarded and you've got it, is to get out there, do a site visit, walk through everything that's involved. I think as much as you try and pre-plan, sometimes when you get out there and you walk it together, with the agency, see everything that's involved. It's everything from utilities to tree cover. Sometimes you got to trim back trees, and that can be an issue with equipment. And then what other projects are out there, what the traffic is, are there parking, striping, any of these things, and putting that schedule together. I think the other one that kind of goes back to, we're seeing it with our industry events, but also there's a lot of events in general, community events that have been postponed, delayed, and otherwise. So they're stacking up the same way that our industry events are stacking up. So, that can certainly impact the schedule if you have certain things going on and you need to work around events that are happening in the community. So it's really that get together and just kind of walk through everything that's potentially on the list of, just the roadway, but then also the beyond the ancillary, what's happening in the community, and communicate.
And sequence of events, that's one of the first things I like to look at, especially the more complicated the project, the more steps there are to accomplish the success of the project. And so identifying simple things, for example, patching before you crack seal. You don't want your crack sealing operation to show up and the patching not done yet. Just simple things like that if you don't find them out until it's too late, can impact the overall success of the project.
Yeah, so I know I know because the funding is such a key component here. In our next episode, I think the three of us really want to dig in deep on what the funding sources are, what new funding programs there are throughout the New England states, and really dive into this federal funding, both the ARPA and the potential federal stimulus as well. So, with that being said, I'm going to wrap up this episode, and thanks for joining us, and join us next time on New England Road Talk.
Great to be back in person, and hopefully we'll have more of that, but certainly good to do this again and catch back up here with everyone.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the next sessions.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Have a good one. Be safe.